Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I sent the link out to the announcements. Hopefully you have seen it by now. I will, obviously, I'm recording this and I will add it to the YouTube, and we will go forward with that. I'm going to just change my position here. Get a little bit better lighting. I don't know if that's better or not, but anyway, I'm going to just go ahead and add the screen share right now. So that doesn't even matter. Welcome to week 2. We're going to talk about employee recruitment this week, but just before we do, I want to mention I did do a recording for a week 1 class live. I was not able to be in the Zoom session last Saturday night due to Hurricane Irma. We've been hit with 2 major hurricanes in the past, I guess, month or so in this country. Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Irma. Harvey really devastated Texas, and Irma devastated many parts of the Caribbean, which we probably have had some students from there, and many parts of Florida. I am not complaining. My family and I, none of us were hurt. We didn't really have any damage to speak of at our home. We had a tree down and some branches down and some very minor damage, but nothing really to complain about. There are many people who suffered much worse in Florida and Georgia. Some people got floods in their house, and some people are still without power. I'm not. Last Saturday was kind of in and out. So, I couldn't do the class live. I did record it, and I record a presentation for you, and I put it on YouTube, and I put the link for you. Having said that, since it wasn't your fault that I couldn't, that you couldn't be there last Saturday, I'm awarding everyone the 2 points for extra credit. So that's a little extra bonus. To earn your extra credit for this, you either going to have to tune in, or you are going to have to, or you're going to have to watch the recording, and you're going to have to tell me the secret code, if you will. I'll give a Bible verse before the end of my presentation, and you'll have to share that Bible verse in the message tab. A couple things. I do like the class live since we are working in the area of distance education. The reason I like it is because I like to get a chance. I like to have a chance to meet you, at least virtually, and maybe see you and have a conversation, and we can kind of build a community that way. I know it's not always easy for people to tune in at the time we have scheduled these. Try to be cognizant of your time and my time, of course. If I'm teaching during the day and in the evening, I cannot obviously have a class live then. I thought, I've done them on different days to try and find the best time. I thought Saturday night, at least you're free. However, you may be with family, and I certainly understand that. That is one of the most important things. Probably the most important thing after our relationship with God. So by no means do I want to take you from family time. So anyway, I do like to do that, and you can meet me and talk to me, and I share a little bit more about myself. You can read my profile or my biographical little intro there in the course room as well. But anyway, so maybe next week we'll get a chance. I see no one but me is here now. But hopefully we will have some more maybe participants chime in here in a little bit, and if not, we'll try again for next week. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead with tonight's class live Zoom session, and it'll be relatively quick because there's no one here. I like to schedule some time for interaction and some back and forth, because it's really not the best just to have one person speaking. In this case, it's me. So anyway, I'm gonna move ahead. This week, one of the and I'm not going to obviously cover everything. That's not effective, but I am going to talk about employee recruitment, because that is something that you'll probably deal with on some level, whether it is for hiring or for your own endeavors to get a job, or maybe go to work for as a volunteer, or consult with someone. So anyway, we're going to talk about employee recruitment. I'm not going to hit every slide here, but I'm going to touch on some of the big things. This is right in the PowerPoint that's in your class. You have access to this PowerPoint already, but I love this question. How did you find out about your most recent job? That speaks so much to so many things. There's mega research out there that will tell you that people get hired in large part because of people that they know, through some kind of a connection, especially later on in your career. Very important. And it's typically, just a little bit deeper here, it's not always, in fact, probably only about 15-20% of the time, is it someone in your first line, or your inner circle, if you will. A lot of times you find out about a job and you're working at a job because of someone that they know. In other words, you have close friends, and then they have friends that they're pretty close with that you aren't as close with, and that's typically how people find their job. This also speaks to affirmative action. Affirmative action was passed many years ago, and what they kind of looked at was the sort of privileged class, if you will, had access to knowing about the better jobs. So we have to find a way to level the playing field so that everyone knows and has a chance to apply for a job they're qualified for. Affirmative action is not in practice about what many people think it's about. It's not about quotas and things like that. It's about advertising in papers that are read by minority communities. And obviously this has changed so much since the law was passed, with the advent of social media and electronic ads and sites like monster.com and Indeed and those kind of job sites. There was a time that jobs were advertised in newspapers and things like that. So we wanted to make sure that everyone had a chance to know about the opportunities and apply for them if they could, and have an equal chance to get that job, so that the minorities were not sort of locked out and because of not having the information. So anyway, that's I know it's a hot topic. And many people are they don't like it. Many people do, but in my experience, I've been doing this kind of work for quite some time now. Most of the people that I talk to that are so passionate about it, especially against it, they don't really understand the law. And there are some issues with it. There's some issues with it. I understand that, and people have a sort of legitimate. Their concerns are legitimate. But you need to understand, what it is that the law is supposed to be covering. So anyway, I'll move on from that. So yeah, when a company's looking to hire, they want to hire the best people. It's important. They are sort of the consumers at that point. If they're an engineering organization, or an organization like General Electric that has many different jobs, but they're looking to hire engineers. Well, they want to get the best engineers. So they want to make sure that the best engineers, or that every engineer that's out there, hears about it. So they have to advertise in the right places. It could be a trade magazine or a professional journal that engineers read. And those ads typically cost quite a bit more. But a lot of times it's worth it, especially if you're looking for a skilled professional, a skilled craftsman, or something like that. And then once you do that, you have to screen the applicants, and some of them are unqualified. You can do that by looking at a resume. You might know that the job let's go back to, say, an electrical engineer. There's certain certifications and degrees that folks like electrical engineers or clinical psychologists or they have to have. So believe it or not, people submit resumes that, people who aren't qualified will submit resumes. So someone has to go through those and sort of get rid of those and set those in the pile of, these aren't qualified. And then you get the pile of resumes where people are qualified. You can see that they have their certifications. And then you go through and see what experience they have, where they went to school, something maybe about their reference. And this, the quicker you can get this done, the better it is for your company. Again, we talk about the methods. It could be media advertisements. It could be direct mail. In employment agencies, again, a lot of this depends on, is it a skilled worker? Is it a craftsman? Is it an apprentice that you're looking for? Is it a professional? Or is it a entry-level job? Could be, receptionist or secretary or driver or deliverer or something along those lines, which are fine jobs, but they're considered entry level. Computer database, someone who's going to enter data on a computer, you might want them to know Word and Excel and different programs, and you need them to maybe be able to type a certain number of words per minute, but you don't need them to write the programs. So you want to advertise to the right people because you want it to be cost effective. The presentation in the book, also points out that in many companies, special populations are where you might go after. They mentioned the retired. So, for instance, let's say, and this has become more and more a special population through the years. There was a time, when I was a kid in the 60s, that once someone retired, that was kind of it. They retired. And they were not interested in going back to work. They'd earned their retirement. They were going to spend time with their grandkids, and the life expectancy was much less then in the 60s than it is now. That retired person might garden or work in a little farm that they have, perhaps, but they weren't looking to go back to work. Now, part of things have changed. The economy's changed, so people need more income. So sometimes the retired will want to go back to work because they need to supplement their income. Additionally, sometimes they get bored. As I said, back in the 60s, when people retired, that was kind of it. Soon they would pass away in a lot of cases, sadly. But now, if people retire at sometimes it's 60 or 65, 67, and they may be retired 5 or 6 years, or sometimes 5 or 6 months, and say, man, this is driving me crazy. Let me find something to do. They may want to go back and re-enter their field, or they may want to get different training and go back into a different field. Or they may want to go, maybe a professional just decides to go do something that would just kind of be fun, and they want to bag groceries at the local grocery store. They want to perhaps wait tables, or they want to perhaps work at Starbucks. So that's one thing to be aware of. Also, mentally and physically challenged. Now, saw an article today that there are 1 billion people in the world that have some kind of a disability, if you will, some more severe than others, of course, but 1 billion people, that's a large market of people. There's 7 billion people in the world. That means 1 out of 7 people have something. It could be it could be that they're autistic, or they have Asperger's. It could be that they have any number of things. They could be mentally impaired. They could have traumatic brain injury to some extent. You're seeing more and more people, again, at entry-level type jobs that you can tell they have some challenges there, but companies are hiring them. I think there's probably a tax break with that, but it gives those folks something to do, and they can be very reliable, much like the retired who probably started 15, 20 years ago. we'd start seeing a lot more retired people like bagging groceries at Publix as opposed to the high school kid. Well, and Publix is a grocery store down here in Florida. It could be your local grocery store. From the grocery store's standpoint, if they're running a business, there's a lot to be said for hiring someone who's retired as opposed to a high school kid. Nothing against high school kids. I bagged groceries in high school myself. But those who are retired typically, will not call in sick because they happen to get a date on Friday night. They know an obligation. They're more mature. That if they've committed to be there on the schedule, they're going to be there, unless they don't feel well. They're reliable. They're less likely to steal, and those kind of things. The other big population, and I've seen recently a tech company, a computer company in Europe, who is actively recruiting citizens and people from all over the world who have autism. They realize that people who have autism, a lot of times, especially if they're what we would call high functioning autism, because autism is a spectrum. You probably know quite a bit about it now. 20 years ago, people knew very little about autism, but now we've had a lot more people be diagnosed with autism. And typically people with autism do very well with technology. It's an interesting kind of phenomenon, if you will. And this tech company was looking to hire people with autism because they were very good at that work that they needed to do. So anyway, a lot more temp employees as well. Now, I mentioned affirmative action. It's important for a company to recruit a diverse workforce. That could be people with disabilities. It could be people from different cultures, different races, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different religions. The reason it's important, one side might say, well, what does it matter? I want to hire the best workers. Of course you want to hire the best workers. That's a given. But we live in a very diverse society across the globe now. Back in the 40s, 50s, 60s in America, it was a different, not as different as it would look, as it would seem looking back at TV shows and things like that. But more and more, we're a diverse society. So if your company doesn't represent society, it's going to create some unwelcome problems for you, and maybe some unforeseen problems for you in the long run. And a diverse workforce really adds to the richness of your organization. You get diverse workforce from different cultures also has a diversity of ideas and problem-solving methods. So all the expert organizational psychologists highly recommend hiring a diverse workforce. There's challenges to hiring those folks in terms of interviewing techniques and things such as that. But it's well worth it because, again, this is the society that we live in. And some of the, when you're a high school kid, some of the, used to see like a sign in a window of a restaurant, waitress wanted, those kind of things. Papa John's has used on hold recording. When you call, Papa John's is if you don't, I'm sure you do know, it's a pizza delivery place. And if you call to place an order and it's a busy time, on the recording, they'll say, hey, would you like to earn some extra money and have some fun? Because that's typically the drivers is what they're recruiting. And they typically will, promote a driver to manager if they would like to do that. There's also restaurant placemats and things. These are typically for entry-level jobs. Sides of trucks also. You see that a lot of times if you drive on the highway. Trucks will say, come work for us. Pretty much every tractor trailer I see has that and has a number to call for recruitment. A lot of times also, one of the best play, as I mentioned this, you get hired because of the people you know. A lot of times employers will give a bonus to one of their employees if they recommend someone for a job and that person turns out to be a good candidate and they hire that person. So they have their employees out sort of looking for people, which is a very effective way to hire good employees. If, for one thing, people typically hang around and socialize with people that are like themselves. So if you're working for a company and you recommend someone, and now your employer knows you, if you have a good record, and that's not always the case. If you don't have a good record, they'll weigh that in when they're interviewing the recruit. But if you have a good record, they're going to also weigh that in. So that gives them, sort of a, rather than starting at square one, they start on square 3 or 4 or 5 with knowing that person and, knowing that they're stable probably in the community because you know them, and those kind of things. The other side of the coin of that is, to avoid nepotism and, only hiring family members and things such as that. Direct mail recruiting is something that a lot of people don't talk about, but if you can get all kinds of lists, you can buy them. Of course, they cost money. You can, well, in fact, I got one recently. You may know that my full-time job, I'm a guidance counselor for Broward County Schools, which is in South Florida. It's Miami. Broward County Schools is the county right in between Miami-Dade County and Palm Beach County. I last year got a postcard from Palm Beach County Public Schools inviting me to explore an employment opportunity with them. And I thought that was kind of odd. And I set it aside and didn't think much about it. There was a number to call that you could talk to someone. And then when I went back to work, I hadn't thought about it, and somebody else brought it up. They had talked about it, and so every teacher in Broward County got a postcard mentioning or offering to explore employment with Palm Beach County, which I thought was kind of weird. But I mean, it's public record who the teachers are, the addresses and everything are public record. So they sent a postcard because there's a shortage of teachers right now, and the reason for that is the pay and things like that. Trust me. But I'm not sure how effective it was. I'm pretty sure Broward County Public Schools did not appreciate it. I'm pretty sure some phone calls were made on some level, official or unofficial. But that was a direct mail recruiting. And you can get a list of licensed psychologists. You can get a list of people with a commercial driver's license. You can get a list of any number of things. And you can send them direct mail and go from there. That's one other way that companies will look to hire people. I want to go back one slide here. It gives some success stories. The company Integris mailed 30,000 letters, received 350 responses, and hired 5 nurses. So 30,000 letters, when you hire someone, it costs a lot of money. So 30,000 at 40 cents is about $12,000 for the postage. Tack on, I'm not sure how much more for the postcard and whatever have you. But in the end, if you hire 5 nurses, that's it's going to cost you hundreds of dollars and thousands of dollars to place ads and those kind of things. So that was good for them. Employee recruitment costs money. That's a little cottage industry that sometimes people are not aware of. Of course, the internet is booming now. You'll see ads all the time if you have a Facebook account or especially LinkedIn. That's the recruiting site right there. There's ads all the time. And again, based on your searches and everything like that, there's algorithms. And you go, even in your email, you see like a little ad on the side there. I'm always seeing ads for colleges, because obviously I do a lot in education, and I get, ads over there to either pursue a degree or recommend a college or apply for a job. Anyway, so that's internet is obviously very big. Just, you should probably know this, the effectiveness and how to evaluate it. How long does it take to fill the job? Does the employee stay with you? What's the cost per hire? So going back to that example with the nurses, the 5 nurses. So say that, like I said, the postage was 12,000. The literature was probably less than 40 cents to mail it, because it's all the same thing. Obviously someone had to run that, and those, say, it cost $25,000. So they hired 5 nurses. That's only $5,000 per nurse that it cost them. So I know $5,000 is not a small amount of money, but you're looking for a big organization. That's a pretty good ratio there. Yeah, it is important to differ those sources. You don't want to just end up in one tunnel, if you will, and just you'll kind of keep getting the same kind of people. You want to explore and try different things. Yeah, we talk a little about interviews, and there's actually interview coaches and life coaches that will do mock interviews with you. And I'm going to wrap it up here with this. Those questions they ask you, in an interview when you're going in for a supervisor job or something like that. They'll say something like, "Tell me about yourself," and a lot of people kind of see that as an icebreaker, and it can be, depending on the person doing the interview. But really, that's your opportunity when you go for an interview to really, because people say, "Oh, I got married, I got kids, I like to go to the beach." That's nice, and there's nothing wrong per se with that. But when they say, "Tell me about yourself," it's really a great opportunity to tell about your professional experience. Um, some of you have sort of come back to school or started school late. That's a great story. I didn't get a chance to go to college after high school because I had to work, or because I went to the service, or I had family obligations, but I was really passionate about getting an education. So at the ripe old age of whatever it might be, 26, 36, whatever it is, I made a commitment to go back to college and finish my degree. I had a family and I had kids. I had a lot of obligations, but I was really determined to get my college degree. So, that shows a lot right there, because now they've just learned a lot about you. You're responsible, you're determined, you're a hard worker. So that little bit of something right there says a lot about you. And that, tell me about yourself. Also tells you have a family. It tells you, you go to church or whatever the case is, all in a little bit. So when you go into an interview like that, it's good to practice. It's good to have people throw questions out at you and anticipate certain questions, because it's really going to be beneficial to you. Again, people, I don't think, and I talk to people about this sometimes, people don't take enough time and don't approach an interview with the kind of intentionality that they could, and it could really help them. I've done I've interviewed for jobs, and I've also in the past, since I've been with Broward Schools the last 20 years, I've had a great opportunity to interview potential employees and candidates. I've seen some really good ones. I can think one right now that was the best one I was ever in. I can think, it's hard to think of the worst one though, because there have been some pretty bad ones that, I don't know which one would be worse, but you can definitely tell if someone has prepared for the interview and they're coming in with intentionality. It makes a big difference. So if you want to talk more about that, maybe we can do that sometime, or maybe when I give you a call, we can talk a little bit about that. But I definitely recommend working with someone, even hiring a coach to work with you on your interview. If you go, especially going for a job that you really want, that's really important, that's a little bit higher level. So we're going to end it here. We're going to go with, since this is week 2, we're going to go with let's go. Let's just go with Genesis 1:1. How about that? In the beginning, Genesis 1:1. That is our Bible verse. You'll let me know what that is, and you can get credit for viewing this recording. Yeah, same selling one here. So until then, I will see you in the course room.